No, I'm just curious. He will be calling in on the landline. So.
Is he a 191 now?
I honestly don't know. Cool, thank you.
Tune in and get entertained and informed. 990 WBOB, the leader in free media. At Park Wine and Spirits in Cranston, we are committed to providing you the area's most exceptional wine, spirits, craft beer, and cigars at market competitive prices. Conveniently located in the heart of Cranston, Rhode Island, Park Wine and Spirits has or will help you find...
Hey guys, if you're watching this, share this information. I'm going to talk to neuropsychologist, author, speaker, executive coach about all sorts of stuff. So he's going to educate the crap out of me. Hopefully educate some other people. Hopefully in the process we'll wake some people up. That's the entire idea, prerogative of the show, is to give people factual, documented, non-debatable evidence and also offer solutions. And today's going to be one of those days, pardon me, where we offer solutions and we're going to tell people how they can start helping themselves right now, even from a very, very dark place. So if you know anybody that's maybe a little bit distraught or could use some positive encouragement or anything to that effect, someone just needs some help. We're going to be talking with the neuropsychologist right now, and we'll be asking him how anybody, including myself, can do that. So thank you very much, guys, for sharing this information. Like I said, one of the questions I'm going to ask this guy, because he's an executive coach. He's a neuropsychologist, and he has different ideas, methods, and practices that I'm not even completely aware about how to help yourself, how to help others, how to stay more positive. And that's what we really need to do in the face of these people and have some solutions. So I'm going to be doing that right now. Just about 45 seconds left of commercials. So share this link. Thank you guys very much for doing that, and hopefully enjoy. And also this Sunday, remember the 5th of November, this Sunday. I know there's a lot of this and that about Anonymous, but I do like what Anonymous stands for, the ideals and morals that they have, and it's going to be a great opportunity to meet a lot of local activists, and I've used this venue as a method of meeting other activists and as well as educating people on the streets with flyers of factual information. So again, if you guys are in the southern New England area, Providence, around 1 p.m. this Sunday, November 5th, we're going to be meeting at the mall side of the Rhode Island State House Capitol, and we're about to go live. Please share this. Neuropsychologist coming up, Kevin Fleming. Was that him that called in?
He's still on the whoever this person is still on the line.
Great.
So,
Good evening, and welcome to Demand.
give you the red lights and I'll give you the yellow.
Thank you.
Designed to educate, expose injustice, and inspire action. Here is your host, Mr. Will Turbitt.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Renegade Radio 990 WBOB.com. Thank you, guys. Everybody listening in across the world, if you're watching on Facebook Live, please turn down the volume. Go to 990WBOB.com. Click the Listen Live radio links and support the radio station. These guys have been supporting independent views for over 10 years now and helping in the community. They're just finishing up their food drive today, so we're very appreciative of that. There's so much going on in the news. We're going to be hopefully covering some of that if we have some time. All the stuff getting released with the JFK files and the Saudi robot citizen. But I have with me today neuropsychologist, author, speaker, executive coach, and founder of Gray Matters International, Dr. Kevin Fleming, on the line with us, and we're going to go right to him. And anybody that's listening to this now, I just want to take a second and ask you guys sincerely to please share this information, because I'm not just going to be asking him about his work and the findings that he's come across and all of his research, but also how it's applicable to us and how we can use it in our everyday life starting now, no matter how dark of a predicament you may think that you're in and may actually be in, and how you can start to turn that around. Because Demand the Truth, we don't just want to offer factual, non-debatable information to let people know, hey, there's something going on. We also want to offer you with practical solutions to fix that. So without further ado, I do believe that we have Dr. Kevin Fleming on the line. Are you there with us, Doctor? Doctor, can you hear me? All right. Well, we're going to try to get him on. In the Dr. Kevin, are you here?
I'm here.
Okay, great. We can hear you loud and clear. Thank you so much. And as I was just saying, he's a former neuropsychologist, author, speaker, and executive coach, and he is also the founder of Gray Matters International. And I know there's a fair deal of my audience who may be familiar with you and your work, but for those who aren't, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself and your journey, which took you to the place that you are at now?
Sure. Thank you, Will, again for having me. Gray Matters International really was a brainchild, no pun intended, that was really kind of started kind of really from a sort of a reaction from my years of psychotherapy training and doing regular counseling, which of course has much value for many people, but I guess there was an aspect of it that was quite frustrating to me during the years, which was really around getting people to change and not just merely describing the water to people while they drowned and calling that success. You know, that at least for me, that felt like a dynamic that was prevalent for much of my session work. And so I knew there must have been a better way to get people unstuck, whether it's stopping behaviors that you know you want to stop, or starting the new ones that you know you need to do to stay in a relationship or your health or what have you. And I just felt that at the end of the day, most of the skills that we received in our PhD programs were really around good relationship-based skills, validation, empathy. Yes, movement is certainly necessary, but in my opinion, not sufficient conditions for change. And the world of neuroscience, as we all know, has really kind of boomed in the last 10, 15 years, and we're still learning so much about the brain, and it's still a big black box and mystery. But at the end of the day, there's a lot of great insights, tools, technologies, behavioral economics that goes with, in a lot of neuroscience ideas around rational behavior, decision-making patterns, and stuff like that. And I just really felt like there's a lot more from that wealth of knowledge that we can get out to people when they walk into an office and say, hey, I need help with X, Y, Z. Maybe it isn't just constant weekly psychotherapy sessions every week that we need. Maybe there's some tougher wisdom that you can kind of get with and pull in some, powerful research that can kind of maybe be counterintuitive, but still get you where you want to go quicker. So that's really, Gray Matters really was a journey to get to this place where I kind of looked over my shoulder and said, well, I definitely want to keep the skills that I like from my training, but I really want to kind of branch out and get a little more innovative as well.
All right, that was a interesting answer, and I'm not sure if you're speaking directly into your phone or if not, but if you could speak a little bit, you are closer to the phone, you are a little bit fuzzy for the audience here, but moving on to the next question, if you could tell the audience a little more about the work that you're doing now at Gray Matters, where to find them, and how is your work different from other approaches that are currently out there?
Yeah, I think really we're looking at, and by the way, does that sound quality a little better?
Oh, much better. Thank you very much.
Great, yeah. Basically, we're kind of in that sweet spot between what traditional licensed psychotherapists and psychologists are doing and, this word coaching, right, which for me at least brings up a bigger unregulated body of lots of feel-good motivational type ideas, which certainly, again, has its place. But we really want to kind of be that science-based place that's right in the middle between, taking the best practice skills of relationship work that comes from the world of psychology and some of that sort of future-oriented, goal-setting kind of game-changing insights that a lot of coaches are really trying to, try to do in their work. We're kind of right there in that middle. So, what differentiates us from both sides of that fence is that we're going to pull in a lot of best practice science, but a lot of the work that I do logistically, I'm flying around pretty much most of the world, going to people's locations where they need me, and setting up private concierge-based kind of services in their living room. It's like getting their own TED Talk right there in their living room that's personalized for their life.
I think that's very important. I think when you deal with people one-on-one, especially in person, but also directly via the phone or email, whatever it may be, that has a much more profound impact on people. You can, argue online to your blue in the face or try to enlighten somebody, but when someone you can actually sit down and humanize somebody and have that one-on-one conversation, I think it's very, very important. And we are coming up on our first break in a few minutes, but I did want to ask you, we have a few minutes to dwell on this. What role do our thoughts play in our physical reality? Because, there's a lot of people out there that are, negative or maybe upset about something. But just for anybody out there listening, what role do our thoughts play in everyday life?
Well, I think for sure, they are a substantial part of how you perceive what reality is. And so I guess maybe it's more of a philosophical pushback, but I'm not going to, with my clients, I don't really talk about, physical reality or some kind of concrete sense of reality, even though we know that this table in front of me is a table. For the most part, nobody's going to really argue with me. But at the end of the day, when you're dealing with relationship conflict, it's perception of reality, right? And so when you're dealing with perceptions of reality, absolutely your thoughts matter, because that's what we're trying to do is, try to at least get people to see there's possibilities to their narrative, to their stories they tell themselves, and that there may not be an absolute value on a good chunk of the stuff they're stuck on. Some things will be. This table in front of me, if I walk into it, will always fit me, and there are going to be certain sort of relational physics or kind of laws of gravity, in terms of human nature, so to speak, that we do have to know about, and those are unfailing, and those things can be, nailed down to say, hey, when you do X, Y, Z, 9 times out of 10, this will happen. That type of law of reality, for sure, I talk about with my clients. But in terms of their thoughts, absolutely, those are malleable, they're critical, they're influencing, and they definitely hold a big bang for your buck in terms of your happiness.
Okay, so also before we go to break, if you could also plug your website and your Twitter and all aspects of ways for people to not only get in touch with you, but support the work that you're doing out there, because it's very important.
Hey, thanks very much. Yeah, my website is graymattersintl.com. And Twitter is at Dr. Kevin Fleming.
All right, thank you very much. And we definitely appreciate, we have Dr. Kevin Fleming here, neuropsychologist, author, speaker, executive coach, and like he just said, he's the founder of Grey Matters International. That's GREY Matters International. You can find that just online or a simple web search. And also, like I said, we're finishing up the food drive here at 990wbob.com. And anybody listening online or watching online at Facebook, if there's any audio problems, go to 990wbob.com and make sure that you click the listen live. Even if you're going to watch it live, share that link. It's very important. After the break, I'm going to be getting into a bunch of other questions with Dr. Kevin, and also just breaking down what is neuroscience, and everybody wants to change and get better and grow as a person. But, what is that definition of change? For everybody, I'm sure it may be a little bit different, but we're going to break. Thank you guys very much for joining and sharing this, and we'll be right back. Follow me, YouTube.com/TheManTheTruth, at Will_TURBITT on Twitter, and we'll be right back with Dr. Kevin Fleming from Grey Matters International right after this break. Stay tuned.
From September 1st all the way to November 1, the staff at 990 WBOB has pledged to raise 990 cans.
How was the audio, though?
Listeners and fans can donate cash online or at participating local businesses who have pledged their support.
Oh, good.
Joe's Barbershop, First Place Sports, also involved.
Oh, I didn't know you did that. You're awesome.
Prestige Dance and Fitness in North Providence, Rhode Island, and the Shelter on
Oh, okay.
Check out our food drive page for more places to donate, or donate online, fast, easy, and most importantly, safely at Rhode Island Community Food Bank. Each year, the Rhode Island Community Food Bank distributes millions of pounds of food to those in need. WBOB is driving all the way to 990. We want to raise as much food as we can to help those families in our area through their tough time. Donate cans today at a participating location or donate online on our food drive page.
Sorry, guys. Former neuropsychologist. That's a title that has to be licensed, so he's former at this point. Now he's an executive coach for Grey Matters, so pardon my misspeaking on that. And thank you guys very much for sharing. I hope I can see all of you guys in the southern New England area at the mall side of the Providence State House this Sunday, November 5th. Remember the 5th of November at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It's going to be a peaceful rally to educate others. We're going to be passing out flyers, letting people know, hey, there's a lot going on in this world, and you need to be a part of taking action peacefully to do something about it. So now is the time that we need to hit the streets and counteract, Antifa, the mainstream, and the KKK, and all the crazy people out there. We need to be the voice of sanity, because people right now are starting to wake up, and a lot of those people are waking up, and the choices are the alt-right or Antifa, and we need to be the logical, reasonable third choice for these people. So we need to be as factual and come across with the best perspective as we possibly can.
The game might be over, but that doesn't mean the conversation is. Join Tyler Salk and Ryan Fox as they exchange words, statistics, and fists on everything sports. For your path.
You guys exchange fists on that show? I missed that episode.
Interviews with prominent national sports writers.
Oh, shit.
Sports only on Orion's independent home, the Renegade Radio. 990WBOB.com.
You're listening to WBOB.com, Renegade Radio.
Dude, I've been eating them since I bought them, so please. Well, that's chocolate. That's chocolate. And I totally forgot. Shit. Forgot the fucking candy.
Back 990WBOB.com. Problem with the audio, like I suggested before, go to 990WBOB.com and click the listen live, and you can still enjoy the audio here and the video as well. So I appreciate that. Earlier I misspoke. I said neuropsychologist. That is a licensed term. He's a former neuropsychologist. He's moved on to bigger and better things. He is an author, speaker, and executive coach, and also founder of Gray Matters International. Dr. I'm very appreciative that he's there. Make sure you use his YouTube channel. Check out his Twitter. A lot of interesting stuff there. A lot of stuff that you wouldn't ordinarily come across, so I implore you guys to do that. And now that we're back from break, there's what neuroscience is and what neuropsychology is. So what is that, and how have you used that to better your research?
Yeah, so traditionally when I was in clinical practice doing that kind of work, neuropsychologists by training are usually doing a lot of work on brain injury. So whether there's a head injury, concussion, cardiovascular accident, there's obviously a bunch of stuff that goes on in the brain, attention-wise, memory-wise, focus, thinking, concentration, mood. These kinds of things aren't going to necessarily be worked out so well in a therapy session. And if you go to an ER and get an MRI or a CAT scan, you'll usually, be greeted back outside the door and told to go on your way because everything's normal. But we know that you're not feeling normal, and everybody who's listening who's had a concussion or who's had some type of a brain injury, they know darn well that things aren't normal, things aren't right. And so neuropsychology was a specialty field that developed really in response to handle brain injury and the effects of that. And so traditionally what a lot of those folks do is a lot of testing and assessment to figure out the level of impairment that you actually have compared to a normal population, and then devise a cognitive rehabilitation plan or some type of rehabilitation process to get you back to normal. And as we know from neuroplasticity, the brain is malleable. It can change. Many facets of functioning can change and improve, and so neuropsychology really taps into that. The reason why I feel like there's more that folks can do is, now with the advent of neurotechnology, we're really seeing that you don't have to just play video games to get certain functioning up to par. You can literally rewire your brain with a bunch of quantitative EEG-based kind of feedback mechanisms, and that we won't get into that now. But there's a whole brand of neuroscience that can really help people, sometimes more than therapy or pills.
That's very interesting, and I hear a lot about the over-medication. You hear some news about that, and we'll get to that later on in the hour. But now everybody, anybody out there that may have a psychological problem or maybe dealing with any issues in their life, they want to change. But what is your definition of change? Does that vary on an individual basis? Or what is your definition of changing somebody from, that low state into a better psychological atmosphere?
I think it's a very tricky question because what typically happens is people will use language that seems very similar. So I can be in an early stage of change, and I can put that person next to someone in a later stage of change. And when I mean early or late, I mean in terms of readiness. And they'll say the same thing, I want to lose 20 pounds. But someone in sort of a pre-contemplative or contemplative state is going to have a lot of yes, but. Yeah, but here's why I'm not doing it. But someone who says, I want to change up there in a later stage, they're going to have a lot more preparatory power behind their intention, and aren't going to necessarily need as much sort of emotional work maybe or on the barriers or defenses. So, yes, what is change? What does it mean? It takes a long time to figure that out for someone because, again, as I said, linguistically it comes out the same. People do usually want to be changed. They want change. They just don't want to be changed, which is sometimes where resistance comes in a lot. That's one facet of why it's difficult to really kind of get this clearly. The other thing is sometimes change is the reduction of a negative or getting pain down, getting a symptom from high depression to low depression. That may work for somebody. They may be so in pain and suffering that just lowering that is enough. Where someone else says, no, I don't want to just be less depressed. I want a radical new way of living and interacting with people. So again, they'll come into the office kind of saying that, but then it'll take really an art, this is the art part behind the science, to figure out where their readiness to change is, where their values and belief systems are, and where their BS factors are. Where's the stuff where you got to help them call BS on themselves to say, wait a minute, you say this, but patterns of behavior indicating this, then maybe that's where your natural desires and inclinations are.
So do you think it's important to call the BS on every single person, or, are you going to get a negative reaction out of certain people when you do that, or do you think it's important to confront people with the truth?
That's a great question. I mean, obviously, this is not an easy yes or no answer. I'm not trying to dodge the question, but I think deep down, every human being deserves truth. Absolutely. The ethics of how you do it and whether you're offensive in how you do it, those are big key pieces. Because even if you speak the truth, if someone doesn't buy into it because you've insulted them, they're not going to be on your board, not going to be on your ship. So you've just shot yourself in the foot by, touting the truth banner, but not, being sensitive to the relationship. So that's where the stage of change is very, very critical. And I use a lot of his theory. Actually, you guys are out of Rhode Island there, right? Well,
yes, sir.
Yeah, there's a great researcher at University of Rhode Island named Prochaska, and he's pretty much the guru on it's called the trans-theoretical model of change. And his research is very, very powerful because I think it really shows the stage or phase-based way we do change. And he's come up with these 5 different stages. And, I think being mindful of where people truly are at, and then it's not that you water down the truth, but sometimes, you have to help people have the right type of problems, right? So maybe because you're in an earlier stage, you don't just slam them with truth. And that's why we all have friends who are just assholes, excuse my French, who are, speaking, this is what you got to do, Johnny, do this. And it's like, turns us off because we're not ready to hear it. And it's not that we're resistant to truth. Those folks in earlier changes just need to have their own problem. And if a good friend or confidant or advocate needs to have good boundaries, to not step into their backyard of psychological landscape and let them have their right amount of power and pain and suffering.
I think that's very important what you just said. So anybody listening, you're going to have to go back and re-listen when we air the past cast. And could you spell that individual's name from Brown University so I can take a notation of that, please?
Sure, yeah. I don't think he's Brown. He used to be at the University of Rhode Island.
Oh,
and
okay.
I think, he's got a company. He may be in the private sector now, but Jim Prochaska is his name, and wonderful research that he's done over the years, very distinguished psychologist. Jim Prochaska. So I think that stage of change stuff, at least for me when I went through my training, it really made a difference because it made you pause. It made you realize that you can't just hit people over the hammer all the time with quote-unquote truth, that the best truthful thing you can do is see reality as it is. And once you see people where they are and speak to them, truth takes, you let the natural process unfold, and you'll see that truth will naturally unwind itself in front of them naturally over time. And this is why with certain addicts or people that are compulsively doing their own pain over and over, people who have those kinds of folks in their lives know darn well you can't just go in there and say, hey, you're doing cocaine, stop. Okay, that's mom, I will. That typically doesn't happen. Yeah.
No, you're absolutely right, and this is very powerful information. I myself am going to have to go back and re-listen to what you're saying, and it's very true. And I feel like during the times that we're living through right now, and as we see a lot of mental illness just kind of everywhere, especially in the United States, you're right. We need to have a tactful way in which we approach people and help make that transformation, because right now we're at a time that's very polarized, and I think we're making great strides for the future as well as a society. But I'm going to talk about that and several other things. We're coming up to our second break now. We have the longest segment right after that with Dr. Kevin Fleming. He is from Grey Matters International. That's GREY Matters International. Make sure you check him out online. You're listening to 990WBOB.com. Make sure you follow me also on Twitter at Will_Turbitt, TURBITT, YouTube /Demand the Truth. And we're going to be back again next Monday, 7 p.m. Eastern, the next few weeks with more amazing, interesting guests. But we have a lot more when we come back with Dr. Kevin Fleming. So stay tuned and please share this information.
Inspired the inner graphic artist in you. Everyone can become a professional designer with PhotoJet's graphic design tool. Whenever you feel inspired, you can always create awesome designs with massive templates from posters, flyers, cards, and invitations. PhotoJet meets all your needs to create graphic designs, make collages, and edit photos. Check them out at photojet.com today. With only a few clicks, anyone can create professional artworks even without any experience. Powerful design and editing tools enable you to achieve high-quality results quickly without any hassles. All for free. That's right, free at photojet.com. No download or registration required, effortless and time-saving. Design like a pro today at photojet.com.
Hey you, Joe Rhode Islander, looking for a night out? Look no further than Shelter Arcade Bar in Olneyville. That's right, Olneyville, 111 Dyke Street, in fact. You can go down there, sip on some craft brews while taking...
So, anybody come with me November 5th?
Coin-op video games, everything that you love, from Frogger to Pac-Man...
We're not going to do anything crazy. We're going to be peaceful, try to educate some guys out there, and girls, and trans, and all of the other 68 genders, especially the Apache attack helicopters. We're going to be educating them, because I think that dropping hot loads on civilians is terrible, so I think probably starting with them would be the most efficient, and we'll get the farthest with that. Anybody that hasn't seen that video, check it out. It's pretty ridiculous. But yeah, help us out, and we definitely appreciate that. It's important for us to get together with other people that are in our local community, especially as truthers, and I hate that word, it's almost like a pejorative. We feel like so lonely most times, because like all we have to do is, it's like we go to work and then normies are like, oh, did you hear about Hillary Clinton? Oh, did you hear about the kneeling? Oh, did you hear about the sports? That's crazy. And I'm just like, dude, have you ever even heard of the Build-A-Bear group? But you can't say anything like that because you're at work and you get fired, and then you just deal with normies all the time, and it's tough. And then every once in a while you might run into a fedora, which is a step above a normie, but they're so cynical where it's like, is this conversation even worth it? I don't know. But it's important for us to get together with like-minded people, because the entire goal of what we're trying to do here is to make it cool and popular to know what's going on. So, for example, if we get enough people just in Rhode Island or anywhere, any sector of the world, to realize that the income tax was a fraud and just stop paying it, boom, we win. And then California be like, wow, these guys aren't paying their income tax, why? Boom. Or if we find out the truth about 9/11, pull the string there. Or if we find out, the stuff that we already know about what's in the JFK files. Because the mainstream news are not telling you that Hitler was still alive. They're not telling you that Kennedy was shot through the front windshield. They're not telling you any of that. It's up to us to get that out. It's up to you guys. Even, like I said a million times, if you guys hate the way that I shared this information, great. Take the facts, verify them, and then you spread it. Find someone else that does it better. We need to get a critical mass here, folks. All right, everybody, welcome back to Demand the Truth. I am your host, Will Turbitt, here on 990WBOB.com. I am very humbled and appreciative that we have on the line Dr. Kevin Fleming. He's already blown me away with a lot of interesting answers. We're going to get some more interesting answers out of him, but we're also going to talk about some practical things before we do that. So obviously I want everybody to go to Grey Matters International, GREY Matters International online, and check you out. Support all the things that you've done. Support your book. Follow you on Twitter, and help everybody out. But in the meantime, what are some things, or a thing that anybody could do right now to try to take any negative situation that they may have in their life and make it better? What kind of advice would you give anybody out there that's listening that may be down on their luck?
Yeah, it's a good question. Certainly what we're really seeing in the neuroscience research is before you can start, maybe compulsively or in an excitable kind of way, just starting to change. We all have those bursts, of course, those New Year's resolution kind of, bursts, which we know sometimes don't go so good in the long run. But before you start acting, one of the best things we're starting to really see is getting the brain into a very balanced, mindful state is really important. And you see these now in the app stores and such. You see a bunch of mindfulness apps. I always tell a bunch of my clients, even before you start getting into the challenges of thinking, because anytime you challenge thinking, it basically going to activate a sense of threat in your nervous system. It's basically like someone coming into your house at night, and robbing your house. It's a new idea. It's threatening to your sense of identity and safety of the world that you've built. And I think we underestimate this sense of how much, the inherent threat there is inside change, and on a neurophysio level. And so one of the first things I always tell my clients, just even if they're just kind of stuck and they're wishing and hoping to get out of their place that they're in, just get mindful. If you get into the present, then the past and the future can't seem to bite you as much. And the present is the place you must start, and everything. It has to be right there. And once you're in that place, once you learn that skill to bring the noise down, the white noise in your head, so to speak, down, 9 times out of 10, your question that you're asking yourself even changes. So now, you don't, the thing that you thought you wanted all of a sudden shifts, and you realize, oh, that's not a problem to be solved. Maybe that's just a difficulty to be endured, and I need tougher skin. Or no, that is a problem to be solved, and oh my gosh, I'm doing the same old thing over and over. I don't need just to change my way up. I need to really radically standard deviations kind of on the bell curve need to change. So, mindfulness is the root system that sets up all the different, branches of the tree that you want to be looking at in terms of getting unstuck. But, the brain is a very tricky, self-deceptive organ, and it's always willing to kind of make you think you're changing when you're really not. And so I just tell people, save the effort and just really, really get inside your thinking itself. Think about your thinking in a very non-reactive, mindful way. 9 times out of 10, that's the way to go.
That's a very interesting answer, and I think that you're right. You have to kind of sort things out, and you can spend all the time that you want worrying or being depressed or feeling negative. But if you don't realize that you have now, and that now is powerful, and that now is the moment that you can make a change and kickstart yourself from feeling negative to at least trying to change yourself, I think that's very important. Now, I wanted to have your take, because, you know, you do differ from a lot of the people in the mainstream out there. What's your take on modern psychology and the DSM-5? And if you could tell everybody out there what the DSM-5 is, if they're not aware what that is.
Sure. The DSM-5 is the psychiatric Bible, so to speak, that we use to diagnose mental illness and psychological disorders. And, of course, the insurance companies will have used this with the ICD-9 for years to kind of get a nomenclature of what a normal version of pathology is. And so, yeah, it's, you know, my take on the DSM-5 is, you know, I think it's gone through some good changes and iterations, you know, moving more towards sort of a state-based way of brain state way of understanding certain things on the spectrum versus a black and white, either or, you have this or you don't. You know, that's been kind of the, you know, check this box or that box kind of world for so long in psychiatry and psychology. And I think we're starting to realize there is a lot more of a spectrum to most quote-unquote illnesses. So I think that part's positive. My only reaction is I don't think we've done a great job differentiating between psychopathology and mere eccentricity, people who are just different. You know, I was part of a research team with a guy out of Scotland, named is David Wheat, years ago, contributed to his book called Eccentrics, and he was one of the first guys that came out of the scene that said, not only are eccentric people not crazy or psychopathological, they really do a lot of creative things way better than somebody else, and they actually have a health factor that's higher in terms of psychoneuroimmunology and resiliency. They seem to do better on a lot of what we would call now wellness type tests and such. So I think that part, you know, the DSM-5 is not really doing great on differentiating those kind of issues. And, you know, I'm outside the fence now, right? So I'm not inside the world of psychology and psychiatry like I used to, so I'm probably not your best commentator on it. But overall, you know, it's got some strengths in terms of at least understanding that there are brain disorders that are, you know, aren't going to be talked out necessarily. You do have to get some serious, you know, medication help at times for certain things, the vegetative depression, whether just, you know, a suicidal issue that's really high risk and repetitive that may, you know, just constantly be putting someone in harm's way. These are things that you need to take seriously. And thank God for the DSM-5 to at least give, you know, a name to some of these things. But, you know, to the nail and hammer, the world's a nail, right? Anything gone to an extreme becomes a weakness. And I think our sort of obsessive seeking of knowledge, you know, at all costs, just to have something in a black and white print, you know, that tells you, you know, this is what you have, that can be an addiction in and of itself, you know, because there's this strange, sick comfort that comes with just a label that we both want and push away. And I think that dance, psychologically, we haven't really come to terms with yet.
Very interesting. Now, we hear a lot of talk about medication as, you know, as a tool to help, and then you hear conversely about the over-medication going on in Big Pharma. What's your take on a medication and its role in helping people?
Well, that's a great question. I mean, this one, again, is like the DSM-5. It depends on which coin or which side of the coin you're looking at. I mean, you know, I do believe there's a place for psychiatric medication. If anyone comes up and says to you that there isn't, I think they're maybe too far on one side. But again, like with the DSM-5, once we get something in our hands and we think it's applicable or it works in certain situations with certain people at some time, well, then it's going to work with all the people all the time for that issue. That sort of confusion being correlation and causality, right? You know, we've seen tons of, you know, philosophers of science really get, you know, raise their eyebrows at a lot of the research problems we have with validating these meds because we're constantly making these thinking errors with how we interpret. We've even seen things where they've done studies where the same statistical result is shown in another study just with more pictures of like brain scans and brain models. And if you put this sort of like heavy neuroscience component inside, you know, from a pictorial sort of graphic set, it seems to make people think something's more true. And I do think we have sometimes these thinking illusions that are going on like that. And I do think the pharma companies are kind of running with that. And there's now a blurred line between true neuroscience and pseudo-neuroscience. And a lot of us who are trained in this are falling hook, line, and sinker as well. I mean, a lot of times I fall into these biases as well. It's very difficult. The more you're trained in something, you can become sort of you're seeking, certain confirmatory things. We call it the confirmatory bias. And it ends up kind of making us right versus, seeking the truth. And I think that's where, when you look at the pharma world and you look at all the research, it's such a mess that we don't know what is true anymore because we're convinced ourselves we're right, no matter what position we're taking.
All right, point well taken. And now I wanted to ask you, as far as the future, what does the future holds? Because we see that here in America that, some of these psychological issues, according to, like you said, the confirmation bias, and we're seeing that increasingly in this ever-evolving polarized world where people on the left only go with resources to back them up, and the same thing people on the right. So anything that's out there, you can kind of find information to verify that. But what's your take on where we're heading psychologically as a nation? Where do you see the future going, with the advent of technology, mix that in with big pharma, society in general? Where do you see the future holding? And then also, I've been asking all the questions here. Any other points that you would want to instill upon the listeners?
Well, I think it's the meaty, heavy question you asked, and I'll take a stab at it in my own sort of hubris. But I think I'm sadly thinking that we're becoming a culture addiction, right? And not just in what goes up your nose or down your throat, but this ego-based addiction of being right. It's probably one of the biggest things that we see. In my first book, The Half-Truth High, was really around this sort of thinking addiction. But, we're definitely seeing, with the advent of technology and the information flood and how much we're on Google and the internet and getting things fast, the more you train your brain to get things so immediately, the more these dopamine hits and the reward systems are hijacked so much that it's very difficult to get a sense of content. And we do now see in the neuroscience research that there are distinct neural networks between reward-based pleasure networks and what we would call as contentment. And I think what's happening now is we have this happiness addiction. We have everybody's wanting to be happy. I can't tell you how many times I hear that. Just want to be happy, doctor. Just want to be happy. But I think happy, from a definitional standpoint, is it's mixed up. Even if you Google the definition for happy, you'll see so many different words that are used for what happy state is, and they're not the same. At least from a deep neurophysiological standpoint, receiving pleasure and being rewarded for something that you're going after more and more, and liking something so much that you don't need to repeat it because it's just beautiful in the moment. These are two inherently diametrically opposite ways of living. This, to me, is the quintessential problem of problems, because this is going to set us all up for seeking door number 2 solutions to our marriage, to our health, to our own sort of goals. We'll say we want to be quote unquote happy, but we're really going to end up probably choosing what gets our reward lights, lit up in our brain more.
Okay, Dr. Kevin Fleming, before we let you go here, and thank you for all that information, if you could please reiterate to everybody listening your website, the books that you've written, and the best ways to get in contact with you digitally.
Great. Thank you so much again for having me. The website is www.greymattersintl.com, greymattersintl.com. And the best way to get a hold of me is I'm very, very good on email. I respond to everybody as personally as I can, as quick as I can. Just shoot me a note at kevinflemingphd.com. And you also can get any of the contact forms on that website I gave you. It'll come right to my email box. In terms of my books, you'll see on my website, you'll see that book, Half-Truth High, that I wrote about maybe now 7 to 8 years ago. And then I've done a lot of contributing with Psychology Today, Huffington Post, and other different articles that you can kind of look at there. But yeah, I really appreciate you having me on the show, Will.
No, I appreciate you coming. It's been very, very informative, and I'm over here like dancing like a monkey trying to listen to my producers and all this other stuff. So I'm definitely myself going to go back and re-listen to this podcast when it goes live. And I can also attest to what Dr. Kevin Fleming was just stating. He is very responsive to email. He's a very, very busy guy, and I'm very appreciative and humbled that he took the time here not only to come out and inform our audience about ways that we can better ourselves, but also to be so responsive via email. We have the final segment coming up. Again, thanks to Dr. Kevin Fleming. Check out his books and his websites. I'm going to wrap things up with a couple news articles and rants in the last segment here and tie everything together nicely with a bow at Will_TURBITT, Twitter, YouTube /Demand the Truth, and we will be right back. Thank you so much.
Inspire the inner graphic artist in you. Everyone can become a professional designer with PhotoJet's graphic design tool. Whenever you
How much
feel
time is in this final
inspired,
segment?
You can always create awesome designs
7, 8.
with massive templates from posters,
All right.
flyers, cards, and invitations. PhotoJet meets all your needs to create graphic designs. Make
So guys, obviously Dr. Kevin Fleming has his take on things, and there's certain places that he doesn't necessarily want to take it to because of his established career, but I'm going to give my own take on why I think there are a lot of why Big Pharma exists, why people are prescribing so much medication. He was talking about people constantly wanting to be happy, and I think I have the answer for that. I have my answer for that, and I'm going to tell you about that answer, and just why people are psychologically the way they are. And then I'm going to set up next week's show and talk a little bit about what we're going to be going over as far as a whole bunch of slew of information, the JFK files. Obviously, we're always investigating what's going on with Pedowood and out there, and Pedogate, and Podesta stepping down, the whole Manafort deal, Saudi Arabian robots. So a lot of crazy stuff. I always, I never get enough time to go through all this. But that's why we'll be back next week, 7 p.m. Eastern. Brian, thank you so much, and everybody else out there for sharing this. It's very much appreciated. I hope this information gets to people. Like I said during the last break, my goal is to get people to the critical mass where we can all agree on something, whether it be the Federal Reserve, the income tax, 9/11, Bilderberg Group, taxation is theft, any one of those things that we can pull the thread on and have that house of cards peacefully come toppling down, we win. I mean, they've built this huge house of cards, but there's many chinks in their armor which we can use advantageously for ourselves in a peaceful fashion, and that's what we're trying to do here. So thank you guys all so much. Thanks Hans, thanks Angela for everything you guys do. It's very much appreciated.
Decisions brought to you by feedthepig.org. Well, I finally did it. I improved my credit score. You're kidding, right? No. How are we supposed to be the bad boys of electro-synth pop if you're out there being responsible? The band is about to be discovered. This is our year.
So very interesting stuff, talking about psychology. If you guys missed the beginning, right there, neuropsychology, and how people interact with their own brain, how they can help themselves out. I'm going to give, I already allowed Dr. Kevin Fleming to give you guys some of the solutions, and I'm going to speculate here why in the last segment as to why the mass amount of people are on medication. They're depressed. Why is everybody depressed? Why is everybody medicated? Why are mental issues and mental health, higher than they've ever been? So we'll figure it out. I'm going to give my answer. Last segment. Thank you guys so much. All right, we are back live here, 990WBOB.com. Thank you guys all for listening and sharing. Final segment, if you guys are watching online, go to 990WBOB.com. click the radio, click the live link, share, support these guys here at Renegade Radio. Today and tomorrow, we're just finishing up the food drive. Thank you guys, the few out there that did support me. I know you guys are all out there geographically. We just let Dr. Kevin Fleming go. It was very interesting. He had a lot of surprising and interesting answers to some of my questions. And I always seem to run out of time, but I did want to give my own speculation as to why I think that we're in the situation that we're in, you know? He was talking about people just want to be happy. I just want to be happy. And there's a great documentary. It's free online. I believe it's still on YouTube. If not, it's definitely on Vimeo. And it's by the BBC. It's called Century of Self. Century of Self on the BBC. And it breaks down, it's a 4-part documentary. You can find it all lumped together. I think it's on YouTube and Vimeo as we speak. Century of Self for free online, put out by the BBC. And it takes a look at the work of Edward Bernays. Now, Edward Bernays is someone that I discuss a lot. I've read a few of his quotes here, more than a few of his quotes here on the show. And Edward Bernays was the nephew of Sigmund Freud. He literally wrote the book on propaganda and coined the term public relations. He wrote many books besides the book Propaganda, and he worked with the highest-ranking governmental officials, including presidents. He worked with the largest corporations. He was hand-in-hand with the Rockefeller family and all the other robber barons. And he believed, and he said on audio, on video, that people are stupid. I'm paraphrasing here, but you can find all of Edward Bernays' shocking quotes online for free. He said that people were stupid, and in a democracy we had to be controlled and trained in order to do things, and we had to be turned from citizens into consumers. And he did that. He got women to start smoking. He took dresses from ankle length on women and moved them up, all the way past the thigh. People, the pork companies would come and say, hey, we got all these pig bellies, we can't sell them. Then he created a campaign with an American housewife saying bacon and eggs, and that became the quintessential breakfast here in America, all because of Edward Bernays, and there's so much more. So I implore you to check that out. And episode 1 of that documentary, Century of Self, is called Happiness Machines. And like I alluded to earlier, he wanted to turn us from citizens into consumers. And he thought that we could buy temporary happiness through a product or good, and that you would identify a happiness with that. And that would also simultaneously help the American economy, because these corporations during that time in the 20s and the 30s and the 1910s and even the 1940s and 50s, these corporations were like, wow, we have this huge production. We've ramped up all this production after World War I and World War II. And are people just going to stop buying things? So we had to bait these people into buying things. So they figured they'd placate us psychologically and have us buy into this materialism and consumerism. And then they thought it would also be beneficial for the economy via capitalism. So they have used psychological means to trick us through advertising, through media, through Hollywood, through even school. We've documented that very, very, very well here on the show. Just go to 990wbob.com, check out the past cast, and something that people were bringing up here in the comments, they were talking about what effect does this mass psychology have on you? And these same elite, like I said, the robber barons, these governmental agencies, the Rockefellers, and these non-governmental entities working hand in hand with the government, and like I've said a million times, in Rockefeller's autobiography, David Rockefeller's autobiography, Memoirs, that came out in 2002, he talks about his experiences in the Army where he met William Paley, who was the head of the psychological warfare department in the Army, who would later go on to found CBS. And of course I've talked about it ad nauseum here about MK Ultra and Operation Mockingbird and how these people are psychologically, like I said, through all these different venues, through media, through all these things, through everything, even sports, every single venue of entertainment that you can possibly think of, to get us to a psychological state where we're docile, we're consumers, and we're heavily medicated. And why do they want that? So we're docile because we don't stand up and take a peaceful stance against these people doing these corrupt things. And that's why they want to keep us medicated. So we remain like that, and they make money. I mean, it used to be illegal here in the United States, and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it's still illegal in Europe, to sell medication on TV. Now, if I walked out of here with enough marijuana and I sold it to somebody and a cop happened to see me, I would get arrested and go to jail. However, simultaneously, I guarantee you, if you turn it on to one of the TV shows, there's going to be a pill for back acne or inner back left knee rash or like neotuberculosis. There's going to be something. There's a disease that just got hatched, and they're going to sell drugs to you. So they're going to sell drugs to you on TV. But if someone sells a plant that occurs naturally on this earth, they can go to jail. So one other final thing I wanted to tie into it too. It was also that's something that somebody mentioned in the comments, and I wanted to discuss was the diet. The diet also has a lot to do with this. We're eating genetically modified crops and these things with pesticides and herbicides that kill bugs, rats, rodents, plants, birds, all like phantasms, other dimensional entities, and then we eat it. Do you think that's doing anything to us? And then we take a shower, we put fluoride all in our body, and then we wash up with fluoride toothpaste and put some aluminum under our arms. And we wonder why we're psychologically messed up. So that's my little rant. I think it's because of the elite that have taken it this way. Luckily, we had Dr. Kevin Fleming on earlier to explain on mindfulness is the key. Really take a look at yourself from outside the box and your situation. Stay positive. Remember, now is the moment to make that change. Stay tuned next week. We're going to break down the JFK files, Saudi Arabian robots having more rights than women. I guess there's no such thing as women anymore. So stay tuned, all my men, my women, my trans, and my attack Apache helicopters until next week at 7 p.m. Eastern. We'll be joined from iCitizen News with Eric Moore and so much, much more information. Demand the truth. Thank you all so much for sharing. I love you. God bless.